Well, we're going to get back started working on Dashkin today in C++. So let's get started. Hello. So let's pull a Visual Studio and just get everything basically started. Let's get our timer going. So let's just get our basics going. How about it? Not going to be doing anything too nuts today. Hopefully we're going to... Got my short list of tasks. Short list has got movement, sliding down a slope. Then we're going to break up the physics settings into data-driven states so that we can then create things inside of Unreal and tune the values for the movement of the characters based on data assets that we save. So we can save like a slow character, a fast character, and we can kind of break it up into specific characters as we go along and we want to tune things. And the big thing is this update locomotion on ground, and last time basically I ran out of brain power when I was working on it. But we kind of just need to start from square one with our velocity for exactly what we're doing. With our on-ground movement, it's pretty much simple. Alright, well, this should be good enough. So we're just going to start off with our customary, pull all the latest from Perforce, compile all the things, make sure we're starting off with a good workspace, close all the files that we won't be messing with to start with. That way they're not in the way. And once we get started, we'll actually get started. How about that? Should be good. Should be good, right? Right? One can only hope. Yeah, I expect all the people to come and join me at, midnight here on the West Coast, which is when I pretty much woke up today. So what do we got so far? This is locomotion on the ground. And what we're going to have to do is figure out a good way to set up our velocity. So basically what I'm thinking is our current velocity we want to component-wise move our current velocity to our wanted velocity, but we're going to have basically, we're moving along the surface of the normal, so we kind of instead of using our wanted velocity, we pretty much have to have a wanted velocity magnitude, which is what we're actually moving around. So we don't really want a wanted velocity, we want a wanted velocity magnitude, and that should be positive and negative. So basically we should be moving to the right as fast as we can, or we should be moving to the left as fast as we can, and that should be kind of right or left basically to the normal of the surface. So our surface is this is our normal right is down and left is up and stuff like that, and that depends. So left and right is arbitrary based on what we're actually standing on. So how exactly should we do this? So basically we've got our object is telling us what to do, which it's basically saying, like, I want to go in this direction. I want to go this direction vector, left or right, and then up or down. So what we should be doing is when we're, I think we need another value here for our wanted velocity. We should have like wanted velocity magnitude or something like that. So let's take a stab at that sort of thing. So if we had like a wanted velocity magnitude. It's not a magnitude, so we want like a wanted velocity in direction. Let's start it off at 0. We do like set wanted velocity, I'm pretty sure. How are we actually calling set wanted velocity? Of course, we need to check out all of our files because version control. Let's see, we are doing get position, set position. Set wanted velocity is our direction vector, so we're actually using our direction vector. So it sounds like what we're doing is we're basically taking our normalized direction vector, we're going to take a look at if its y is to the right or to the left, and that's going to be what we want. I think that makes sense. So basically we're going to say if direction.y is less than 0, else if direction.y is greater than 0, else. Say our wanted velocity and direction is going to be the velocity. It's less than 0, so it's going to be negative velocity. Of course, this has the issue that if we're standing on a slope and somebody holds the down key, and it's like a steep slope, they might expect us to run down. So we might want like the normal that we're standing on and figure it out that way. But I think people get just like hold right to go right, hold left to go left, and that's it. And we're also, the velocity should be full velocity, because that's pretty much what we're doing. If you're moving, yeah, full velocity. So we're also going to need a current velocity and direction. And we're basically going to take our current velocity in a direction and set our wanted velocity and direct. Yeah, we're moving towards this current velocity and direction when we're moving on the ground. So what we're gonna want to do is see like where our current velocity is changing, and we're also gonna have to like recalculate our current velocity in a direction based on our current velocity. So the current velocity should be at the beginning of every frame should be correct. So why don't we just do it that way? So we'll calculate our current velocity in our direction every frame based on our current velocity. So we should do that at the beginning of tick movement. So at the beginning of tick movement, we're going to calculate our, let's do calculate velocity. And what that'll do is that'll go ahead and turn our normal velocity into the velocity that we have in the direction. That should just kind of work. So as long as we always set our velocity vector properly, we will always have the correct velocity in the direction that we're moving. So let's start calling. This is like a tick method thing, so I'm going to throw it up to the rest of them. So basically we're doing the same thing that we were doing before with our current velocity. Is like, so it's like if our current velocity dot y is less than 0, else if current velocity dot y is greater than 0, else our wanted velocity and direction is going to be 0. Is that what we want? Might be. Thank you for following Graham1642. Welcome. Looks great. Well, thank you. We're just working on a few things here. Nothing too insane, just we're trying to get momentum working properly for our character when they're moving on the ground. We've got the air movement pretty nicely locked down, but we want it so you can start running and speed up and slow down, and then we can apply forces based on if you're on too steep of a slope, so you start slipping down the slope. I think we just answered our question with our velocity in a direction. I think it should just be 0. We can always change this, so we're going to need the size of our movement of our velocity vector, so we'll just get like, say velocity equals in current velocity dot size. So basically just saying if the current velocity y is less than 0, then our current velocity and direction is going to be negative velocity. Otherwise it's going to be our positive velocity. So we got this code here which was controlling our velocity. So let's take a look. So what we need to do is we need to set our... There's two different things here, right? Okay, so if there was a collision or there wasn't a collision. So if there wasn't a collision, then we're gonna get set. So maybe we should just kind of start ignoring this basic stuff here. So if there was not a collision, we're no longer in the air because there's nothing below us. What should our velocity be? Well, we're still going to want to apply our basic velocity stuff, regardless of if we are on the ground or not, sounds like. So I think we just use our physics util method. Where are our physics utils? Here they are. That's actually math utils. It's got this one. And it's got this lerp float lock. Lerp float dt is the one that we're looking for. This is a function I wrote a very long time ago, which basically it linearly interpolates one value to another value based on a dt and a speed. So it's really and it doesn't overshoot. So we're going to start with our m current velocity in direction. We are going to end at our m wanted velocity, and our dt is delta t, and the speed is going to need to be a value that's how fast this thing changes. So we're going to do, this is going to be g, this would be like our momentum change constant. We'll just call it momentum change constant. Or set that to something pretty big at the moment. Well, let's set it at something pretty small at the moment, and we'll see our guy like really slowly. So should be pretty slow to get moving. So all we have to do is set our current velocity in a direction to that value, and this should not be wanted velocity, and it should be wanted velocity in direction. So it'll move us towards, and we have positive and negative velocities there for this. So if we're negative, we should move more positive, if that's the way we're going, and all that stuff. Nothing too insane. And of course, Twitch is all sorts of messed up all the time. Trying to make sure that dashboard is actually loaded properly on my other monitor so I can see what's going on. And of course, all the stats are always broken. Yeah, I think that's just how it works. So what we need to do now is we need to calculate our current velocity based on our current velocity in a direction. So we've changed our velocity. So now we need to calculate our current velocity so that like we can actually move. And I think if we calculate our current velocity, everything will be fine. And our velocity is going to be based on if we're actually sitting on something or not. So if we did not collide with anything, then our velocity should be whatever our velocity used to be multiplied by this. So basically, if there was no collision, we need to set our velocity right here. So it's going to be, basically we're going to take our current velocity, we're going to normalize it, and we're going to say that we're going to multiply it by the fmath absolute value of current velocity and direction. So we just moved this magnitude, so we might be going faster, but we're going to be going in the direction that we were going last turn. So last turn we were on something normal to a surface, supposedly, so we should be fine. So just take our current one and just move in whatever direction we were trying to go. And if this was left and we were holding right, it's going to be smaller than it was. So basically, it's current velocity, normalize, and just say m current velocity equals m current velocity times the absolute value of this new one. Otherwise, what we need to do is, we did actually collide with something below us. If the collision distance is greater than the floor stick distance, it's going to be the same thing. We're going to want the same calculation for, well, we couldn't actually land on that thing. It might be really far below us, so don't land on it. Otherwise, we are sticking to the floor. So we need to get the normal, the movement direction, and the normal to the actual thing. So that's going to be, the movement direction vector is going to be our current velocity dot y is, we were using that earlier. It's actually going to be this current velocity and direction. It should be positive or negative based on the direction of motion. So that should rotate our impact normal properly. So it'll give us our movement direction vector, and our current velocity should equal our what are we doing here? It should be the movement direction vector times the size of this thing. No, it is the current velocity direction The movement direction should be rotated, should already be normalized because of all this fun stuff. So it should just be, we're multiplying this by, I believe, the absolute value of the current velocity, because this could be negative, and we've already done that basically by the rotation of the vector. And of course here we could rotate in either direction, use positive or negative or something like that. And, oh no, course, go away. So I think that should work. Alright, so that is setting our current velocity properly based on our current velocity and direction. And I think all the rest of our calculations are just work off of that. So if this is done properly, we should see our character slide, have momentum. They should start slow and then get faster as they're running around. And I spent like an hour and a half at the end of last stream, I think, trying to implement exactly what I just did. And my brain was just so shot, I just couldn't even do it. So so if we actually just got that done, then well, it's a good thing I walked away from the stream yesterday after only 9 hours. My brain was toast. Of course, we changed global utils.h, which changes absolutely everything. So we're going to be suffering compiling for the next 2 bajillion years. So let's see how Fatsack runs around now. Let me just double check. So this is physics utils. Do we? Doesn't look like we zero out any x velocity. We're gonna have to double check our x velocities and make sure that they're proper. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Oh man. So what happened there, as you can see, we can very slowly change our direction, but when we jump and move, we're just narrow. Momentum is working, but our other controls are so responsive, like when we're in the air, that we're having our slowdown there. So it looks like we got momentum working, and it should actually look fine when we're moving at a constant rate. Hello, Karakan. Yeah, unfocused lost, yeah. I think it was just freaking out. So I think what's going on there is our momentum change constant's just way too low, but our momentum is changing properly. So let's take a look at it. And we may want to noodle around with that a bit more. Yes, good morning. It is nearly midnight here. We are 1 minute from midnight. I have pretty much been asleep since last stream. I don't know, I just crashed out. I don't know, maybe I was trying to get sick or something. I'll usually just go to sleep for like an entire day instead of getting sick. It's another lesson. I should never leave the basement. I should just stay here. It's safe here in my little bubble. If I ever go outside, there are other people, and other people can cause diseases. It's interesting that we just instantly, when we hit the ground, we actually end up going a little faster than you'd think we should. Because we just hit the ground and we had like a little bit of motion. And then he just does it. 9 a.m.? Alright. So let's go see exactly why we're having a bit of an issue there with our velocities. So it's going to be, I need to print off a few things. I need to say like, because it looks like when we're moving from ground to air, I don't see any problems. We're moving at a good speed when we go ground to air. Like just no problem. We go air to ground, and I think it's moving a little bit too fast. So ground to air would basically be that when we calculate our velocity, it's going too quickly, so I guess maybe we should just be taking our y velocity here, so it should just be like the absolute value of the y. So let's try that. But that's gonna mess up a few things, isn't it? I should basically be calculating our velocity based on if we're on the ground or not. And if we're on the ground. Alright, see you when you get back, Erican. Our velocity should only really be calculated here when we're in the air, such as this. When we're on the ground itself, we don't want to actually recalculate this. Let's see how this looks real quick. I'm pretty sure we'll have problems where our movement on the ground is wrong on slopes. Yeah, see, we're like super slow. But when we're running across flat terrain, we should look right, which it does. It looks exactly like what we'd expect. But then we start running down a hill, it's gonna get all sorts of jacked up. So what we need to do is this current velocity calculation for the direction should only occur if we are if we're still flying. Otherwise, we should ignore this calculation. So, well, it's not flying, it's in the air. We have different states for our guy. So if we're in the air, our velocity is going to look like this. If we're on the ground, well, the issue here is when we switch states, we're going to have problems. So probably what we should be doing is we shouldn't actually be calculating our velocity here whatsoever. We should just be making sure that the settings are proper when we leave our functions. So let's go ahead and just get rid of this calculate velocity. And instead go into this locomotion. Jeez, all these playlists are crap half the time. So we're already setting it properly if we're on the ground. This on the wall motion, I think we're actually going to get rid of it. So I think it's just this update locomotion in the air method. And what we're going to need to do here is make sure to set our velocity properly. I'm pretty sure everything here, we don't actually have any returns. We just have, we have return like velocity equals new velocity. So maybe I should have this calculate velocity method, but I should be calling it only in a few places. I should only be calling it from the flying stuff. So it's like when we're in the air, we're just gonna switch to a different playlist that has more reliably not crap tracks. Or at least ones that aren't good for me to work towards or work with. We're working on momentum today. So I just need to calculate the velocity before we return from this method here. That's a break, not a return. So we're looking for the returns. Are there any returns? Just one here. Kind of messy. Like kind of messy, I mean really messy. But this should calculate our velocity and our movement direction based on our y velocity. So when we're on the ground, we should move just fine. And this should also prevent us from speeding up when we hit the ground when we're moving in our z. So we should have our momentum working now, I believe. So what the momentum's going to do issue is it's going to make it so we can speed up, we can slow down, and it'll also make it so we can make a negative velocity, right? So when we're on a slope that's too steep for us, we will be running against the slope and then we'll start moving down the slope, and there's nothing we can do about it. And we can easily do that just by basically taking the normal of the slope and seeing like which direction it's in, and then adding kind of negative to our velocity in that direction. That's what we were trying to do at the end of last stream, but I was just brain fried, so we didn't get any of it done. So hopefully after getting some sleep and all that, we can actually make a little bit of progress here. It sounds fun indeed. So it's working just fine on flat ground, but when we're not on flat ground, it's all sorts of screwed up. So I thought we fixed that. I thought we took this out. I must have undone my do on that. So I was like, this is acting like we haven't taken out the code that I took out. Oh yeah, I control Z a little bit too much. Works though. How are you doing, Issue? I think it's what, West Coast time for you, or East Coast, or whatever. So it's midnight for me. I can't. You must be burning the midnight oil over there. So let's get this movement. I'm getting it going. Just one piece at a time. So that's looking correct. You can see if I like tap the key, it moves a little bit. So it looks like it's working pretty well. It's got the same thing there, where if I lift the key up, he slows down. If I hit the other direction, it doesn't actually apply anything. So the question would be, should we have a bit more of a force to stop the character? If we because if we just lift the key up, he stops at the exact same speed as if I'm hitting the other direction. So I think what I should probably do there is I should have two things. We might want quite a few things for our momentum change. We probably need like a G momentum change velocity constant. So maybe if we're moving super quick, we can stop faster or slower based on how fast we're going. So if we're running like super quick, we can't stop very quick, or I don't know. There's a lot of different questions around some basic tuning values for that, but I think the biggest one is G momentum, like an active change constant, and then we should change this to like a passive change constant. Well, it's not necessarily a breaking state, but it's close. I'd like to do a lot of the movement stuff without hard states for the actual map. And then we'll have the animations kind of follow what the map is doing, because it's a lot easier to create a good simulation and then make it look like what the simulation currently has than it is to make something look correct and then make the simulation perfectly follow what it now looks like. Because then you get weird things where, he enters the stopping state on his animation, then the physics totally change for some reason, and the movement can be kind of janky just because of animation stuff. So I'm trying to get the simulation, and then we do the other way. Therefore, the simulation feels nice without it looking nice, and then we can make it look nice. At least that's the theory I'm going on right now. So passive and inactive constants. And as for like the maximum speed of a character, we could add a tuning value in there. Right now I don't have a maximum speed for the character. It's just like the controls say if you're holding the right key, we want to move to the right at maximum speed, so it just tries to go there. So let's see how it feels like with a passive and an active constant on there, and we'll just do that. So, and let's double the active constant as opposed to the passive constant. So basically, what we're going to take here is we're going to take the we come with our constant. So our constant, we're just going to set it to our passive constant first. And what we want to do, we want to see is if our wanted velocity direction is 0. Now let's just say if the absolute value is less than our passive constant value. Let's check. So G passive velocity constant, and we're just going to set it to 1. So if the absolute value of how fast we want to go is less than a certain amount, then we'll set it to passive. Otherwise, we're going to default to active change. And we're just going to set that to our movement constant. So what that should do for us is that should make it so when we hold the key, we will accelerate faster. And I've set it to 20,000 for that, which is twice the speed of gravity, so whatever, it might be a little too much. We'll take a look at it though. These things will all just be tuned and retuned and then tuned again. And then kind of what we can do to implement things like breaking states is kind of what I was thinking was you'd have all these knobs on the character, and when we hit like if Bitey is running super fast, and then we want to like dig his hooves into the ground and like really stop, we can basically just multiply. We can have like a momentum active, like a momentum change constant exposed to like blueprints or whatever, and the blueprint can just say like enter state, breaking, and then it can just change the constant for momentum change and just be like change it to something real high, and it doesn't have to be inside the simulation itself as like a real value. We could just kind of multiply it with something between like 0 and 1 or 0 and 2 and change exactly what we want. So if I hold the direction, he should slow down real quick. Yeah, that feels pretty good. It's still, as soon as you introduce any sort of momentum, all of a sudden the character feels a lot slipperier than you would expect. Like all of a sudden I'm like, I can feel Fat Sack slowing down. Even though he's actually slowing down, you know, it's only taken him like maybe 5 frames to reverse course when I change the direction key, but it's still like, you know, you feel like you're fighting the character. So momentum's tricky in platformers. You put anything in there with momentum, and then all of a sudden, the character just does not feel the same. Like right there, we had a little bit of momentum, so I fell off the platform. Same thing, I could land on this no problem without momentum, but now that I got a little bit of momentum, it just feels like he's a little too slidey, you know? So I don't know how much I like the momentum, to be honest. Being low, even this is not like the passive change. I'm not really sure I like the passive change constant being that much different, because I really wanted him to stop there. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm left up on the keys. You know, like Fat Sack needs to stop as soon as he can, and he wasn't. On those small platforms, it can make a huge difference. So, well, maybe that's just I need to tune it a little bit higher. So that's what we're gonna do. Just gonna tune it until it feels fine. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to implement our sliding down our slopes, because we got momentum in there. So that's there. Now we should be able to actually start sliding down slopes. So how are we going to do that? Basically, when you're on a slope, we're going to want to apply a force to slow you down. So the question is, should we do this before or after we apply your velocity? And the other thing we could do is we could also say, like, at a certain slope, you cannot affect your direction that well, so you stop being able to move yourself pretty much. So basically, at this point, we've got a normal. So let's try take one, which is going to be, we will change your velocity after you have already affected your own velocity, and we're going to affect it based on the normal of the slope. And we're going to move the current velocity direction to the left or right depending upon the y of the normal. So should be pretty simple. Basically, if the slope is like this, well, the slope's like this, the normal is like that, and because the y is negative, we just take you over in the negative direction. So we're just going to do our if collision.hit.impact normal.z is less than our g to start sliding. Then we'll be applying our velocity. So our kind of looks like this. Basically, our constant is going to be our slope slide gravity, and we're going to multiply that by the sine of the impact normal's y. So collision.hit.impact normal.y. So if our impact normal is 0, we'll do that. This should just lock it at whatever. So the question would be, should we actually take the not the sine of the y, but should we take the y itself and multiply it? So like, if you were on this slope, the y is actually going to be greater, and if you were on this slope, you know, the y is fully 1, versus if you're here where y is, you know, very small, it's like a point 0.2 or something, right? So why don't we just multiply it by the y itself? And we're going to be wanting to move towards a certain velocity. So the question should be, what should the velocity be for us? So the velocity should be our terminal velocity. Like, say we're on a slope that is very, very close to vertical. Sliding along that vertical wall, we never want to have our current direction velocity in that vector ever be greater than what it would be if we were just falling in free fall. So what is our free fall velocity? I think it's our max vertical speed. So I think that's what we need to do, is we need to set this to our max vertical speed. So our wanted, yeah, let me just do like our wanted velocity should equal our max vertical speed, but our max vertical speed needs to be multiplied by the impact normal. So again, it needs to be the absolute value of the impact normal. So basically what happens is, if we're on like a little slope, right, like this, the y is going to be very small. It might be like 0.1, so our maximum sliding speed is going to be our terminal velocity, but it's going to be, you know, like 1/10 of our terminal velocity, just because of reasons. And is that anywhere near accurate? Like, if we were on a hill and we were sledding, and we're on one of those sleds with runners, it's like a really shitty snowmobile. We're going down. We're all like, that's a person, by the way. I can draw, I swear. It looks that looks really awful. But we're going down a hill. What's gonna happen to us? When would we stop? Well, we'd probably only stop accelerating when we actually like hit a rock. So does the terminal velocity matter? Well, let's just throw it in there right now and see if it actually makes any sort of sense. So our wanted velocity should be, I think this works if we don't have the absolute value there, because our wanted velocity is going to be negative and all that stuff. So delta t's fine. Our constant is going to be, oh, so we're actually just saying like, what's our wanted velocity, and then our constant is going to be this impact normal thing. So this constant needs to be positive, and the wanted speed needs to be positive or negative. So that's our constant, that's our wanted velocity, and that should just have us start slipping right now. Welcome back, Hurricane. We're just making super awesome drawings of, I don't know, some angry elf going down a hill on a toboggan. This is my limit of painting in paint.net with my mouse. It's pretty good. I give it, there's my signature. I give it a 10 out of 10. Would draw again. Alright, so we're going to say this is going to be the slope constant. Right up there. Yeah, great art. Yeah, thank you. Be here all night, literally. No problem. So what we should see now basically is our character is going to the wanted velocity is going to be the max vertical speed multiplied by the impact normal, which will be positive or negative. Well, this also brings a question in here, right? Like, we need to know this velocity is not in the way that I think it is. This velocity is relative to the way that the character actually wants to go. So, I actually can only calculate this after we have a direction vector, because what I need to see is this wanted velocity has got to be in the direction that we are moving. So if our y movement direction, so if the sign of our movement direction vector dot y is equal to the sign of our collision hit impact normal y. So that would basically be our collision vector is this guy, our direction vector is this guy, this vector along the surface. If the sign of the y's matches, then we're actually positive, otherwise we're negative. So we're gonna have like and we're gonna set this to 1.0, and if this doesn't match, then sign value is negative 1.0. And we do need to do fmath, the absolute value of this impact normal, and we need to multiply that by the sign value. So this should move us in the direction that we want to go, down the slope, regardless of if we are heading right or left, or if we're switching our directions, if we're running left or running right. If we're running left down a slope, we're actually going to start, we're going to get to where we want to go faster. There is an issue here, which is if this will actually move us slower. If we're moving down if wanted velocity here, if our terminal speed multiplied by our impact normal is less than a certain amount, we will actually slow down on slopes that are flatter. With this, on a flat slope, we would slow down. We would not accelerate nearly as quickly. So what we need to do is we want to only apply this if it's going to speed us up in the direction that we're going. Because alright, so if the sign value... Alright, so if the sign value is greater than 1.0, or is greater than 0, and the current velocity direction is greater than the wanted velocity, or should we just say if our current velocity, if the sign value is greater than 0, and this is there, then we don't want to do anything. So its sign value is less than 0.